All right, welcome on into the Falls Count Anywhere podcast here from Niagara Falls, New York. This is Charlie Turner, Chris DiCarlo, and John Restano all here with you. Hope you guys all had a great 4th of July. I definitely did. My dog did not, but I definitely did. I hope you guys did as well, celebrating our nation's independence with some fireworks and some cooking out and some beers and all that good shit, because that's what it's all about, Americana, right, guys?
Yeah.
But guys, we have the pleasure on this week's show to bring back a panel of experts and historians and guys that really know their wrestling and have grown up in the business. And as fans, for us as fans, okay, fine, we're hosting the show, but just to listen to the experts give their analysis on some of these classic clips provided by Chris is just awesome. So, Chris, go ahead and give these gentlemen their proper introduction.
Yes, well, it's my honor and privilege to have our once-a-month show here. And first, this month for July, we are joined by former great pro wrestling referee of the WWF, the AWA, and the NWA, Mr. David Dwinell.
Good morning, guys. Thank you so much for inviting me back, and I'm really excited and looking forward to the show today, especially knowing that George and Wes are on the show, two really wonderful historians of our sport.
Pleasure to have you back, sir. Absolutely.
And also joining us, as Dave mentioned already, great wrestling historian, of course, not just the AWA, but all the territories, our good friend, Mr. George Shire from Minnesota.
Hey, good morning, guys. Dave, good to see you. Always looking forward to this. Lots of fun talking old wrestling.
Oh, yeah.
Indeed.
Welcome back, George.
Thank you.
And finally, our man from the great country of Canada above us here, Manitoba, Canada, wrestling historian, Mr. Wes Maidment.
Good morning. Morning, everybody. Glad to be here again with all of you. It's nice to see you again, George, and nice to meet you, Dave. Charlie, John, and Chris. John, see, I got some Maple Leaf stuff back there for you.
Thank you.
I got a signed Johnny Bauer picture I'm going to put up on our next one when I come on, if I can find it.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
Nice.
All that Maple Leaf stuff. Come on, guys. You know?
Anyway, we missed George last month. He was a little under the weather, and we did not have Dave join us. But if you guys want to take a turn real quick and mention about the passing of the great Iron Sheik.
Well, I'll go in first. You know, I had the honor to see Khosrow Vaziri come out of Vern Gagne's training camp in 1972-73. And he was in a class of, you know, Greg Gagne, Jim Brunzell, Ken Patera, just a phenomenal class. And then, of course, bringing his great amateur wrestling background, Khosrow, and he helped Vern for a lot of times after.
Oh, did we lose George there? Something froze up there, I think.
Yeah.
He worked mostly preliminaries in those days. But when he went on the road and he I got his character, so to speak, he came back. It was 1978 when he came back here in the AWA as the Iron Sheik. And he was doing that, I don't know what you call those big, the bowling pins, you know, the Andre the
Indian clubs.
Pins.
Persian clubs, yeah.
There you go, yeah. And he was doing that on the air, showing how strong he was. And then I traveled down to Texas and saw him as Hussein Arab. He was wrestling down there as under that name. But yeah, great character for wrestling. And of course, we all know how he plays into history with the Hulk Hogan thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's really ushering in a new era. And obviously he played a major part being in the right place at the right time. And then he made a career for himself after that. So very sad to see that he passed. Anytime one of our guys leaves us, it's sad.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Absolutely. Dave, did you have some thoughts as well on the Iron Sheik?
Well, I had the pleasure of working and traveling with him on a number of occasions when he was with the WWF and also on mostly on the independents. And I was there one of the first times he wrestled Slaughter, April of '84, out at the Nassau Coliseum. And I don't know why I'm getting this on my screen. And what happened was I have a program that was on the floor. They started fighting in the locker room, and no one knew if it was for real or because they had gone too hard in the ring. But I have a program with blood all over it from both of them from having
wow.
And the Sheik, he almost got me killed one night. When a camel clutch was banned in New York, we were doing a show up in I think it was Elmira, New York, and these three fellows who were inebriated. He put the camel clutch on, and I awarded the match to the Sheik. Well, I went down for the intermission, and they threw me under the bleachers, and they were going to beat me up because they told me that the camel clutch had been had been disapproved by the commission, and I got to go back in the ring and announce that he lost the match. And I thought the Sheik, who was really friendly with me, put them up to this, but I found out. But I told him that Vince was suing the commission, and he could use it until they went to court. So I kind of got out of it that way. But and then the other time is the Sheik one night. He always liked me. Referee Dave, one of my favorite rips. I'm going to make you look really good tonight. I take Slaughter's boot, and I take my boot with the hook. Slaughter ducks. I hit you in the forehead. I slice you 3 or 4 times, and I make you really look good with the crowd. I said, oh, no. I said, that's not in the contract. I said, there's nothing in my contract that says I bleed. And I said, I really would appreciate it. But Referee Dave, I'd make you look so good. I said, I think I look all right as it is. So he was a character at all times, and but a wonderful guy. And I felt bad when I saw that he had passed, and it brought back a lot of really wonderful memories. One other one, if I could share it, is he was doing a radio interview one night, and he comes into the room pounding his chest and doing this, and I said, Sheik, it's radio. He says, I always like to look good for my friends on the radio. Those are my Sheiks, a couple of my Sheiks.
I love it, man. I
have a funny Sheik story very quickly.
Yeah.
Before COVID, whatever Cauliflower Alley Club, I think it was 2018 or 2019, I was there, and Iron Sheik was there. And he got up to the lectern and had the microphone and started going on a rant. But it was funny. He said that when he was on the road so much, he said he'd been gone one time for 6 months, and when he was going home, he went right by his house because his wife had painted it.
Yeah.
So he was a character.
Yeah.
I liked him when I first saw him in the Mid-Atlantic on TV, and he feuded, I think, with Mulligan right away, and that was a great battle, great battle. He was also Canadian champion up here in Toronto for Tunney, and he did a great job of taking care of Angela Mosca. They suited each other perfectly fine. But unfortunately, after the WWF came to Toronto, they tried to rekindle that feud, and it was about the 4th match on the card, and it was just a dud. And it's weird to see someone at the peak and then I'm not saying that he wasn't able to do it, but at that time, just because of the guys were not into the match or whatever, and it was the 4th match, and it was just a dud. And it's great to see people at the peak, and then it's interesting to see them when maybe they're just working their gimmick, right? But it was I liked them. I thought it was great. And since I've been coming on the show, guys, the Sheik tweets just blew me away. If I had known you guys were doing that, like whenever you started, I would have been watching just for the Sheik tweets. That was great.
Yeah,
good job of getting those together.
The plan now is we're going to do some classic Sheik tweets. I'm just going to go into his Twitter feed from years past and just dig up some classic Sheik. Because, I miss just going to his Twitter feed and taking 4 or 5 tweets from him, because he always had a great take on, like, current events and who he wanted to make humble, and then, of course, Hulk Hogan. So, I do miss that from the Sheik. But we're gonna have some classic Sheik tweets upcoming in the coming weeks here for sure.
Awesome.
All right. Well, guys, the format of this show. Once a month, we have 4 classic clips, and we'll show the clip, and then we'll go around the horn and speak on them. And, John, if you want to play the first one for us.
International Wrestling. I'm Mike Midland, along with the champion, the one and only Bruno Sammartino. And Bruno, this week in action, we're going to be in charge, Mr. Peter Lash. the timekeeper at the bell, Dave Moses. The physician in attendance at ringside, Dr. Lawrence Bender. Your referees for this hour of wrestling, Fred Sparta, Ken Dugan, and Dave Hebner.
Mine to become the WCW Windy City Wrestling Heavyweight Champion, and Sonny Rogers, along with his partner Johnny Stewart, have everybody, I'm Dick Holloway along with Pampero Firpo, the wild bull of the Pampas. And I'll tell you folks, All-Star California Championship Wrestling will never be the same. And what is that you've got in your hand?
Hey, you man, something he's getting very lonely. So River has to make him company. Denver de Duel, Olympic Auditorium.
Championship Wrestling.
Oh, that's
He was a character.
Wrestling fans is a one-fall encounter with a 10-minute time limit. In the corner to my right, from Venice, Italy, weighing 245 pounds, the dynamic Dominic DeNucci. And his opponent in the corner to my left, from New York, weighing 250 pounds, luscious Johnny Daggett. And his manager, the great Wild Bull Curry. One fall match, 10-minute time limit.
I tell you, every time I do an interview with Bull Curry, I have to use a towel afterwards.
Their opponents from Buffalo, New York, at a combined weight of 520 pounds, the Western States Tag Team Champions, the Fabulous Kellys. And the Kelly twins, Pat and Mike. The Western States Tag Team Champions taking off the champion.
So that was some rare footage from my great library that I have. Of course, I mentioned to you off camera that was 1982 out of PA with Mike Mittman and the great Bruno Sammartino. And then Windy City was, of course, out of Chicago. And that last one was All-Star Championship Wrestling from California, which I personally love. And look at all those great people and matches on there and great quality. Guys, go ahead.
Yeah, I was going to say real quick, Chris, right off the bat there with Bruno Sammartino, WWE SmackDown was in Madison Square Garden last night. And they made it a point to mention Bruno Sammartino because they were talking about Roman Reigns and his long title reign. Bruno Sammartino selling out the Garden 147 straight times. He was a New York City, Madison Square Garden wrestling legend, but especially at MSG.
Yes.
You know, when you mentioned Bruno in that respect of selling out the Garden all those times through all the years, I think it's just unfair if Bruno is not considered, you know, like the greatest of his era for that territory. Because it was a natural, you know, every major heel that came to the WWF back then, they were groomed to go in with Bruno, and the big one was always at MSG, and like you say, Bruno sold it out, and that's legendary right there. You can't go any farther than that.
Well, I had the great pleasure of raising Bruno's hand in the middle of the ring when he came out of retirement back in, I think it was around 82, 83, 84. And he wrestled Bob Orton. And it was one of the greatest matches of my life, obviously. And having worked in the Garden about 14 or 15 times is certainly was also a highlight of my career. It was also nice to see Dominic DeNucci in that in the clips he had there. He was certainly another character along with the Sheik, but brought back a lot of memories seeing some of the wrestlers in the clip that you just shown. But certainly Bruno, as you mentioned previously, has to be considered one of the, if not the greatest on the East Coast, just by longevity alone. So,
Wes?
the emotion that Bruno showed. I never saw him live, you know, so I can't tell other than what I see in videos. The emotion of the guy sucking in the 20,000 people and then the 14,000 in the fell form or whatever it was. And they just, like, he could blink and they probably sighed or they probably stood up or he's so emotional, and how that transposes to a gigantic arena. It's a talent in its own, let alone the wrestling, but just holding those people in his hands and the power of, as they said, Argentina Rocky used to say that I could make them riot or I could make them stop just by doing one thing. And it's so interesting to see that talent and that charisma, I guess what it is, right? To have the power to hold a ring, the arena full of people. It's crazy.
You know, one of the things, guys, when you talk about Bruno and the mystique that he had, as I said a bit ago, you know, wrestling for almost 8 years as the Tri-WF champion. The power was on January 18th, 1971, when Bruno lost the title to Koloff, when they knew in advance that they made no fanfare about the fact that Bruno had just lost the title. They literally ushered Koloff out of the ring. Get out of here. Bruno is pinned, and the Garden, I've heard so many wrestlers and people talk about this that were there. The Garden was silent. And I mean, when you've got 20,000 plus people you could have heard literally the old phrase, hear a pin drop.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
They were stunned. And that was the magic, because they had built him up to be unbeatable. And every fan that came there month after month after month, year after year, they knew that Bruno was going to get rid of the latest big boy, bad boy that was in the ring with him. And this time, it didn't happen.
Yeah.
Beautiful promoting. And it really was a time too when a title meant something, because, you know, I always said that wrestling, to be believable, you had to work hard to get to the title. You had to work harder to keep it, to make it seem real. And the longer you held it, the more believable it became. Unlike today, you know, where they switch the title around like a hot potato that we used to play as kids.
Right.
And to me, it meant something. So that's Bruno's power.
Well, I think Bruno, the thing that struck me about him was his humility. The man was very humble. I mean, I met him as a kid in high school when I went to the World's Fair in New York, and I waited till everybody left, and I went up to him, and he spent about 8 minutes talking to me, a kid, after he had just he was carrying around 2 quarter kegs of beer at a Budweiser pavilion. And, you know, he spent 7 or 8 minutes with me. And then years later, I got to have dinner with him. He was commenting on some shows I was working in Pennsylvania. And the thing that struck me about him, first of all, I don't know if you knew it or not, but he would not drink in a restaurant if there were kids there. He loved to have wine, but he would not drink if there were kids present, because he wanted to give a healthy persona. But he told me something that lasted me throughout my wrestling career. He said, Dave, if there's 5 people at the show, 50 people at the show, 50,000 people or 500,000, you work your tail off, because these people may have saved their money for weeks to see you. Yeah. And you owe them the best you can give. And it makes no difference how many people or where the show is. And I always remember that. But that is a humble man who sold out the Garden so many times. I mean, his humility was wonderful.
Wow, that's such a great way to look at things too. I mean, it doesn't matter how many people are there. You're there doing your job, and when you put the most into it, that's what made him so legendary, right? It's just work ethic, and that's why he held the title for so long. And a lot of people have him, you know, I guess from our era, a lot of people have him on that Mount Rushmore of wrestling, Bruno Sammartino, and rightfully so.
And just a quick comment, guys, about those classic promotions. I mean, wow, right?
Yeah, it's interesting. You see, we don't get to see enough of Dr. Jerry Graham, which I could watch forever and ever. He was a piece of work for sure, and I really liked him. Of course, I never saw him live either, but I really liked watching him because he even though he got to be a really big guy, he could still flop around the ring like a beached whale, and it was pretty interesting to see a quick clip of it. I don't know what he said to the announcer, but something I saw him go like that, like I'm out of here or something.
Yeah.
And quickly, the Kelly twins in on the last clip, tag team champions, and we just celebrated, not celebrated, but acknowledged the anniversary of the accident in Newfoundland on July 4th, where Pat Kelly died, and that was nice to see them, because I always liked them, and they were big. They should have, I think they should have gone further for identical twin team, but I don't know.
Yeah.
And did I hear that right? They were from Buffalo. Is that correct, Chris?
They're from Hamilton.
Oh, from Hamilton. Okay.
Well, they may have been announced from Buffalo, but yeah,
right.
they were actually from Hamilton.
Ah, gotcha.
One of the guys on the clips that really made me kind of smile was Pampero Firpo, the wild bull of the Pampas. You know, obviously we saw him shorter hair and much more subdued. He didn't have his beard. I saw Firpo many times in the 70s, or not the 70s, the 60s. And he was here in the 70s too. But boy, in the 60s, I'll tell you what, when he was at his wild bull, the hatest, the guy was crazy. And his battles with the Crusher that we had here in the AWA, cage matches, nobody could get Pampero for our fans more, I guess, out of their seats than Firpo. And that little shrunken head he had, he used to bring that to the ring.
Yeah.
And wear it around his neck.
Yes.
Saw him as a babyface too in the 70s when he was around 1970. He had a little falling out with Dr. X, who was here, and he ended up uniting himself with the Crusher, his long enemy, and became a babyface. And it was interesting because in 1969-70, that's kind of around the hippie era, my era, when I was a teenager. And Firpo became very popular with the younger kids. They really related to him. And I think that was kind of interesting. And then I saw him as a little kid. I was very young. He had been here in Minneapolis as Ivan the Terrible.
Yes.
In 1958.
Yeah.
And of course he left and came back in 64 as Firpo with no acknowledgement that he had been here before and it was the same guy. But yeah, very good character. Saw him at Cauliflower a few years ago, and oh my goodness, quiet, soft-spoken, just a kind, gentle man. And I sat at a table with him, and we talked about the AWA days. But sometimes I had to bend over to listen because he talked so softly.
Okay.
So definitely a character. And I think he was Bruiser Brody before Bruiser Brody. Mm-hmm. He was that type of character in the ring. He was so fast and so deliberate and so on his opponent. Not as big as Brody physically, but I think certainly in his era, he was every bit of Brody.
Dave, any Firpo?
I not Firpo, but it was nice to see luscious Johnny Valiant. I had a couple, like one or two really funny quick stories about Johnny. One of the funniest guys I've ever met behind the scenes came up to me at a show and said, Dave, I haven't seen you in a long time. Was it a cold coming up through the ground? You know, and the other story is he had Kamala. He was managing Kamala at the time, and it was a TV taping. And Kamala was going to do a job on this young kid who was unknown. And the young kid says, I have relatives in the audience. How about when he splashes me at the count of 3, I pull my shoulder up and I save face and so forth. And this kid was not even known. So Johnny goes, yeah, sure. So after he leaves, he calls Kamala over and he goes, Dave, just follow the script. He splashed him 3 times.
Oh, man.
He splashed him 3 times. And I counted to 3, and the kid was crying in the locker room. And I said, well, you learned a lesson. You don't go up to a superstar and tell them what you're going to do. Wrong thing to do. Just go with the flow and do what they tell you if you want to stick around.
Yeah. Lesson learned, right?
All right, John, let's roll our second clip here.
Wrestling
fans, Dave Price speaking to you from Maple Leaf Gardens in Toronto once again. And this week, Frank Tunney has another fine card lined up for you. Baron
champion, part of the company, weighing 233, Alonso Conoscenti. And with him,
For the world heavyweight championship and gold belt and recognized by the National Wrestling Alliance. 2 out of 3.
Wish you had to see something like that to realize how mobile he is. He smags Lawler in the corner. The big flag in this big
a good time, and that will reverberate around the entire venue. So atmosphere is a huge ordeal, and places like the Mid-Century
match in progress. There you see the current world heavyweight champion driving that knee, but it was nicely blocked here in a back leg trip from a single leg pickup. And
hello again, everyone. And apparently there is a bit of hostility insofar as those in attendance here is concerned. And the young man out of Pennsylvania, Brian Knobbs.
During the early 1980s, including the 8th wonder of the world, Andre the Giant. The winner gets...
The great Mac Classics. I'm the voice of the Mac Classics, Rocky Raymond. October 20.
Wow.
That was, of course, our clip for legendary classic pro wrestling venues, as all three of you can relate. We started with Toronto's Maple Leaf Gardens, 1957 there, Wes, and we went through all kinds of different classic pro wrestling arenas, huh? Some of the best there.
So the Maple Leaf Gardens is just iconic for the ramp, mostly, but also for Frank Tunney promoting for so many years, 40-something years. And just to see those buildings and think about what's gone through those buildings over their time period. The Olympic, so famous. Dave, maybe you would relate to this. I was in New York City once as an adult. I've been there tons of times as a kid, but I don't remember. And we came up one of the train stations, and we walked around for a little bit, and I turned the corner, and there it was, sitting right in front of me, Madison Square Garden. I was so excited just to see the building, right? It's just so great to see. And the Sportatorium must have been something else also. But I think if I was going to want to see a build wrestling in a building, would have been the Olympic for sure, because it was, for Canadians, it was like 1 million miles away, and for East Coast, and even for you, George, it was like 1 million miles away.
Yeah, and you know, when I saw the Olympic, I saw the Sportatorium back in what I call my traveling days. As a younger kid, it was always something. It was like an aura that came over you or me when I see that building in a town that I had heard about or read about in the magazines.
Yeah.
Now, that Sportatorium they showed, Chris, was that Florida or was that Texas?
That was Dallas, Texas.
Okay, and that's what I thought when I saw it. I just wanted to clarify. I had actually been to both Sportatoriums, Eddie Graham's Sportatorium, but the Sportatorium in Texas, in Dallas, oh my goodness. What an iconic place. You just had to, I mean, it was wrestling. And you got goosebumps literally getting out of your car and going into that building. I used to go down there a few times that I did, and Boyd Pierce, who was the ring announcer and TV announcer for Dallas Fort Worth, and he would get me tickets to get in. So that was fun and just iconic. Olympic Auditorium. I get goosebumps just thinking about it when you think of the legends that went through there. Freddie Blassie and the Destroyer and so many others. Pedro Morales. I mean, it's... And then I do want to touch, guys, I got a kick out of hearing the announcers.
Yeah.
You picked out Jimmy Lennon.
Yeah.
And you picked out Larry Matisic from St. Louis, Kiel Auditorium. Now there's a place in St. Louis. Wow, I love that building. And then we heard Gordon Soley. We heard
from the Omni in Atlanta.
Yeah, we heard Mean Gene. And then Rod Trongard from the Twin Cities here. So that was kind of good. I enjoyed that.
That was fun, yeah.
The Mean Gene was from Winnipeg, Wes.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's all right.
Nice.
But go ahead, Dave.
Well, I didn't, unfortunately, I went about as far as the South and the East as far as arenas were concerned, but I did work in the Garden about 15 times. And describing what it was like then and now is unbelievable. I mean, you'd walk up 2 or 3 hours before the show, and there'd be 4 rows of fans on outside the barricades, the steel barricades, hoping to catch a glimpse of one of the wrestlers going in. And then you'd get in the ring, and I very often got the first matches, and I thought it was because they wanted to start off with a bang, but it was because they were usually the longest, and the other 2 refs didn't want them. So I'd get in there. Sometimes they'd go 20 minutes. And but you'd get in the ring, and they would announce good evening. And all they had to say was good evening. And you had 16,000 people screaming. I don't quite see that today when I'm watching some of the stuff on TV.
No.
But they were like, it was unbelievable. And one of the things about the Garden show, I had the last match in the Garden that used the drop ceiling microphone. Which I'm kind of proud of, because they used to have that one that dropped from the ceiling. It was black, and they'd hold it. Well, the next show they went to handheld mic, and I found out many years later that the Junkyard Dog and who was a Cowboy Ron Bass was the last ones to use that. I got to work a couple other famous arenas. The Ridgewood Grove Arena out in Queens was well known for boxing and wrestling, going back I don't know how many years. And
30s and 40s for sure.
They closed it for a while, then they reopened a Ridgewood Grove, and I had a chance to work out there for a couple of shows before it closed again. Nassau Coliseum was another building I really enjoyed working in. They actually held more seats than the Garden, believe it or not. And I had a chance to work in New Haven Coliseum. And where I grew up, I would have loved to have worked at the Boston Gardens. Never had a chance to do that.
That clip was the Boston Garden. But real quick, Dave, that last clip was the Meadowlands, which I believe you were in too, right?
Yes, that was the Nassau Coliseum out in the Meadowlands. They ran. The Garden would run 1 month, and the Meadowlands would run the next. Or sometimes the Garden would run the beginning of the month, and the Meadowlands would run the end of the month. And there's many a great match that took place out there in the Meadowlands. Great fans over the years. But I would have loved to have worked some of the buildings that George and Wes were talking about. St. Louis, Chicago, California. I would have loved to work some of those, and just watching those old clips was fantastic.
I'd like to point out, when you talk about these old arenas that I spoke of, Kiel and Olympic, our own auditoriums here in the Twin Cities, the fans today will never be able to, because it isn't this way anymore. They will never be able to understand when we tell them that when you went to the arena, you got to your seat, you had the ring in the center of the floor, and above the ring, you had the lights. Usually it was 3, 4, 5 lights above the ring. The rest of the arena was dark, literally dark.
Yep.
And when the ring announcer for the evening for the card would come out, climb into the ring, and as Dave pointed out, that pull down microphone, we had them, and then introduce the card, and you heard the rumbling of the crowd from the back when the bad guy would come out to the ring. You'd hear the crowd getting louder as he got closer, because you couldn't see him in the darkness until he got close to the ring. And then the boos when he was going to enter the ring. And then from the other side of the arena, they used to play it where they both came from opposite sides to keep the aura that it was separate dressing rooms.
Oh, yeah.
But when the good guy would come out, and the crowd would get louder and louder and louder and louder as the babyface was coming in. That was something that just made the evening so exciting. And it was dark. And, you know, like I say, in contrast today where they're coming down the ramp, it takes them 15 minutes with the loud music and the fireworks and everybody holding up a billboard, you know. And it is different. Each era has their moments.
Yes.
God bless them. But I'll live with my memories and take those, boy.
It was a sport, not a production.
Exactly.
It was a sport.
And it just, the way they delivered it, it was so real. And then when that match started, they're under the lights on the stage doing their work for the
Yes.
That was beauty, folks.
Professional heavyweight wrestling.
Yes.
Yeah. And
Well,
is that something? Oh, I'm sorry, guys. I was gonna say, is that something that Vince McMahon kind of killed? Was like the dark arenas, because like he was all about production when he went national with the WWF. Was that something that Vince McMahon kind of killed, and then it just people just kind of fed off of what McMahon was doing, and it was just that era was kind of done?
You know, it kind of started a little bit before that, Chris. I know here in the AWA, we had Hulkamania before he ever became Hulkamania in New York.
Yeah.
And we ended up having the Eye of the Tiger, which was his entrance music for Hogan. And then we had the Fabulous Ones that were doing their, what was it, Footloose. I can't think of the name of the song, but that was where it all kind of started. Each arena around the country was doing it with the entrance music. McMahon just took it to a different level.
Yeah.
And you know what? It works for today's wrestling the last 20, 25 years. You can't fault it because the fans enjoy it. It is what it is. But I always say, if you didn't live what I did, then you can't talk against it because you didn't live it. I've seen both eras. I prefer my memories.
Yes.
But yeah, McMahon definitely took it to the new level, and it works the way he does it. So it is what it is.
Real quick, John, you can relate to a lot of these famous arenas too, growing up in the, you know, Toronto's Maple Leaf Gardens for sure, right?
Well, yeah, I was there a lot. Not for wrestling though, for hockey and the odd Memorial Auditorium, which I know you guys went. I remember the darkness. It was really cool. Back
the old
in,
hockey barns that they don't really have anymore. All the arenas look the same now. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. The odd for wrestling was great, and even our convention center here in Niagara Falls was fun.
Yeah, sure was. That which is now a casino. So, well, hey guys, let's take a break here. We're gonna check in with our great sponsors here for the show. It's been awesome so far. As a fan, I'm learning from you guys, you know, and these great stories are just so great to hear, and your perspective of we got referee to historians. It's just awesome. So stick around. We got plenty of more clips on the way, and we're going to check in with our sponsors. We'll be right back.
Digits 988 can save a life. If you or someone you know is having thoughts of suicide or experiencing a mental health or substance use crisis, 988 provides connection to free confidential support. There is hope. The Lifeline works. For 24/7 confidential support, just call, text, or chat 988.
right, welcome on back to the Falls Count Anywhere podcast. Charlie Turner, John Restaino, Chris DiCarlo, all here with you with our panel of guests. We have two wrestling historians, and Mr. George Sire and Mr. Wes Maidman, and all-time great referee, Mr. Dave Dwinell, giving his perspective on some wrestling history. It's been great so far, guys. Enjoying it. And Chris, I know you got plenty more clips to go here.
We got 2 more to go, so John, let's roll it.
Flexing out that leg, caught the ankle slithers of Andre the Giant. The Bella Savage from behind, Randy Savage caught him. And we're talking about Nick Bockwinkel, the man that dominated the AWA World Title picture, and in Savage is trying.
Back again, ladies and gentlemen, with Southwest Championship Wrestling. In the ring, Terry Allen. Terry, one of the finest young athletes that you're going to see anywhere at any time. In keeping with the quality athletes you see on Southwest Championship Wrestling. Terry's out of Chesapeake, Virginia, weighing in at 235 tonight. His opponent, I'm talking serious business. He is the AWA World Champion, Nick Bockwinkel. Nick is the man on the left of the screen.
Wow.
So that was some, tried to get some different, we all know the great former 4-time AWA and tag team champion, Mr. Nick Bockwinkel, right? But trying to get some different matches of his opponents there. As you can see, the silent one was the Big Cat Ernie Ladd. So,
go ahead, George.
Where do you start when you talk about Nick? Wow. I will tell you up front, I felt very honored that I became one of his friends for most of his career here in the AWA and long after his in-ring work. He was a great man, great friend. Had him as a guest at my house more than one time. Shared a beer with him on my deck. I mean, just a great guy. But in the ring, oh my gosh. I'll tell you what, Nick was a ring general. He did not have a problem with any opponent he was in the ring with. Nick could work the style of the wrestler that he was in the ring with. That clip you showed of him with Andre brought back a memory to me when we had a 1-hour draw with Nick defending to Andre here in the St. Paul Auditorium back in the 70s.
Oh, wow.
And the match started, and immediately Andre legit had hurt his back. And he laid on the mat. Now, here's, you know how big Andre was. He laid on the mat. He couldn't get up. The match went, I'm serious, folks, 1 hour, and Nick worked around him by stomping on him, leg locks, arm locks, you name it. Wow. And Nick carried that thing. It was painful, but Nick made it work because Andre was going to go a draw. Yeah. And Andre, as Nick told me later on, you know, Andre was more about size and the incredible fascination of how big he was. But in the ring, as Nick told me, he said, the only way I could have a match with Andre was I had to do everything for him.
Yeah.
And that says a lot. And that's not taking away from what, you know, what skills Andre did have. But Nick said you had to work with Andre to make him look better than he would ever have been. And his matches with Billy Robinson, Nick, you know, I think I saw those guys wrestle each other, Nick and Billy, at least 100 or more times in singles matches, not counting tag bouts, but in singles matches. And Billy Robinson was so difficult to work with. Most wrestlers will tell you that he could be a pain in the butt if he didn't like you or he didn't think you respected him. And Nick said, you know what? I never had an issue with Billy. I'd go into the locker room before our match, and he says, I'd say, William, what do you want to do tonight? And he said, as long as I did that, Billy worked with me. And I will tell you, their matches to this day, if I had to pick out a match that I enjoyed over and over and over again, Nick and Billy. Nick was professional. And those clips just showed it. I love Dr. Schultz, Dr. D. I love that guy, Dr. D. And I thought he got a bad rap in the business because I thought he was one of the greatest heels of his era when he'd come out and insult Hogan and the redneck and everything. He was so good. I always thought of him as a younger version of Harley Race at that point.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Dave.
Well, you mentioned Andre the Giant. Just a quick story. The first time I worked with him was the end of his career. And again, his back was bad. He couldn't fall down in the ring. If he fell down, he'd have to roll out to stand up.
Wow.
So as was per the way I normally handled it, I would go to a wrestler before the match and say, is there anything special I should know about your match? Andre was reading the paper, sitting on a table. He looks up at me and he goes, yes, count to 3. And he went back to reading the paper. So anytime I had his match after that, I didn't bother the man. I just counted to 3, I figured. But Nick Bockwinkel, I had an opportunity to work with Nick when they came out with Pro Wrestling USA. It was Nick Bockwinkel against, well, it was supposed to be against Rick Martel. It was supposed to be against Kamala. But Kamala couldn't make it, so they substituted the AWA champion, Rick Martel. So it was a title match. And what made it really special was in the corner managing Nick that evening was Buddy Rogers. So I was in the ring with 8 great champions in one match. And I would rank it right after the Bruno match as probably the second most really satisfying match of my career, because those guys just worked for like 18 minutes and it was just a pleasure. And of course, I messed up at the end, as the people told me in the crowd. Nick had his foot over the rope when I counted to 3. To this day, I don't believe
you can't see everything.
I don't believe he did, but he had his leg over the rope, but I counted to 3 and gave the belt back to Martel. And of course, Buddy Rogers came in and gave me all kinds of heat. And I said to myself, what's really sad is I'm standing here with a great former champion and nobody in this building knows who the hell he is.
Oh, Jesus.
That was the sad part. And I have to say, the only time in my career, I never wanted to look like a mark, obviously, as a ref. But the only time in my career I ever asked anyone for an autograph while I was an active referee was Buddy Rogers. I had to have the first WWF champion who had the NWA belt and then the WWF belt. And the only 2 other autographs I ever asked for, and they were many years later, was Bruno. I have a picture raising his hand. I had someone take a snapshot in the ring. I asked Bruno's autograph, and Nick Bockwinkel. I have an autograph of Nick with his belt. I met him at a convention one year, and I went up to him and I said, I had the pleasure of refereeing you. And I said, could I get an autograph picture of, I'll be happy to buy it. He gave it to me. And those are the only 3 autographs I ever asked for in wrestling, so I wouldn't look like a mark, was Nick. That's how much respect I had for the man and his talent. Just and a wonderful man to work with.
That's awesome.
When the Sheik era left Maple Leaf Gardens, Tunney had to do something, and he was working. Obviously, he was working with the NWA, the WWF, and the AWA at that time. Vern was sending his guys into Toronto, and we were lucky enough to see. I saw Nick 3 times, and I just recently found out because I found the clip. So I saw Nick against Chief Jay Strongbow, which was unfortunately a terrible match, and they had to do a gimmick where Strongbow hurt his leg after like 3 minutes, which was thank goodness. But I saw Nick against Dewey Robertson, and I saw Nick against I can't remember who it was now, but the last two matches were just to see someone so famous 5 feet away from you walking up the big ramp at Maple Leaf Gardens and with the towel around his neck, Heenan with him and that big, beautiful belt around his waist. And he, you know, I know you would know George and Dave, you know, he was like, he was a veteran. I mean, in the 70s, he was a veteran still. I mean, he worked for so long. He had a great career. And he was one of those guys, I think, also that was sent around to different places to learn the different styles. So he did work a lot of different areas and territories so that when he did eventually come back to AWA World, he was perfectly fit to carry the strap, perfectly fit. Could work any style against anybody. He could be like vicious. He could be that cheaty, cowardy kind of guy. He was very, very talented. And the interviews, my God, why did they even have a manager with him? He was so good.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, Heenan was great with him, but yeah, the interviews with Bockwinkel and the stuff, the words he used. I mean, I love it.
You know, I want to touch on that when you talk about the interviews, because we all know the Nick Bockwinkel, who was so elegant, so using words that we had to run and grab a dictionary to pronounce or get a definition for. And he would be so great at it. Some of you that know, I put together wrestlers' results records. It is so much fun to do their results records through the years, the areas they wrestled in, the opponents, the tag teams, the breakups, the feuds. It tells so much. I put Nick's together, and I presented him a copy of his results record. And he looked at me and with a wry grin, and he says, "You're sick." But coming from Nick, that's a compliment. But when you talk about the autographs, Dave, I asked Nick, I gave him his copy of the results record, and I had one for myself. And I said to Nick, Nick, would you sign my copy for me? So Nick takes the pen, goes down and starts to write. And he looks up at me and he says, "How do you spell statistician?" I said, "I don't know. You're the guy with the big words." So he wrote statistician. I wish I had the copy here to show you. He spelled it all goofy. And that makes it even more collectible.
That's funny.
Because, you know, this was the guy that used all these words. And just, he was so good. When Wes, you talk about how he worked the territories for so long. He started in 1954. And up until 1970, he traveled around to the Pacific Northwest, to California, to the South, Texas, you name it, and earned his oats. Yeah. And when he came in here, he had that character down. Now, just to say the final thing, why did he need a manager? Yeah, in most cases, that wouldn't have been the case, but you had to have the calm, collected, and Nick Bockwinkel, and then have Heenan off the charts. Together, it was a marriage that was perfect. Yeah. It was one time that the manager was needed, and it worked. And Nick he was just good. And what really made him special, guys, is he never took himself seriously. He would do whatever the promoter asked him to do. And that is the primary reason that Vern trusted him with his title for all those years. Because Nick said, "Whatever you want me to do, I do it." He goes in the ring, and he could make the wrestlers look good, and he just did his job and never really took himself seriously.
Well, I think in the Martel match, I'm sorry. I think in the Martel match, they went 18 minutes, and I don't recall a rest hold. You know, I just don't recall a rest hold in that match. And there were certain people. I mean, I don't know how many wrestlers, maybe 500 wrestlers I worked with, 45 champions. And the people that I felt I respected the most and I was in awe of in the ring were Holly Race, Nick Bockwinkel, and Bruno. Those three people I just felt were extremely special because of their ability to wrestle.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do what they're supposed to do.
All right, John, let's roll our last clip.
wrestler that is very well. Sergeant Slaughter. Kendo Nagasaki, of course, a master of the martial arts. Slaughter in great shape still.
Wow, Lord Alfred Hayes looking dapper there in his managerial days there, huh?
His lordship, please get it right.
His lordship, Alfred Hayes, that's right.
That was excuse me. Wow. That was some early Sergeant Slaughter, Mr. Robert Remus, the real name there, but the silent one was him against Ted DiBiase from St. Louis in the 70s. And then, of course, Super Destroyer Mark II in the AWA, and then the mask came off. And, of course, the rest is history with Sergeant Slaughter, guys, right?
Well, again, I had the honor to see Slaughter when he was Bob Remus come out of Vern Gagne's training camp. He was a big guy, I mean, for that era, even as a rookie. And we know the long head of hair he had, and got his polish around the territories, which was so important back in those days. He went to the Central States. He went to the Pacific Northwest, wrestled as Butcher Remus. He was Bruiser Bob Remus. He was Bob Slaughter, DI Bob Slaughter, drill instructor, I think was the DI. And then, of course, you know, he ended up coming in, and his Super Destroyer Mark II gimmick, that literally, you talk about working on the fly in a promotion. At the head of every lineup page, there's those words, program subject to change.
Yep.
And as a fan, you know, you learn to accept it, that from time to time there's going to be substitutions or something's going to happen. But this was an incident, guys, where Don Jardine, who was wrestling as the Super Destroyer for the AWA, he and Vern had some issues in Denver about Vern wanted him to take the mask off, and Jardine didn't want to. Depending on whose side you want to take, you know, Vern felt it was that the Super D had run its course. Mm-hmm. And Jardine said, no, I'm not going to do it. He left. Yeah. And Vern, of course, Hayes, Lord Alfred Hayes, his lordship, had been managing Super Destroyer. So Vern had to come up with a replacement like right there. And he went to Remus, put on this mask. You'll notice in Remus's first Super D matches, he had an X on his mask. And he come out as Super Destroyer Mark II. As Hayes said, Mark II is better than the original. And then Jardine was never mentioned again, or Super Destroyer. But that's how that all came about. That was right. You know, Vern needed a replacement, and he put it on Bob, who at that point in time had about 4 years in the business. And he became Mark II. Immediately hooked him up with Neil Gway, who had been the Hangman and Jean Louis, Jean Louis, other places. But he was Mark III. And very successful, very over tag team. And Vern did really well with him. And then, of course, we remember when later on he battled Bravo. Bravo unmasked Super D Mark II in a couple of towns. One of them, they had another mask underneath after he'd taken the first one off. Okay. So they had all kinds of things they'd come up with. But one time he was unmasked, Remus, and he had tape over his face instead of a mask underneath, you know. So they played the feud with Bravo really well. And then when he came back as Slaughter, very over. And we know the rest of the history there.
Right. Dave?
Well, I had the pleasure of working with him many times on the independent circuit as well as with the WWF. And there are two stories that come to mind. He pulled one on us one day. We were doing a show, and he was wrestling his friend Don Kernodle under the hood. And Slaughter got thrown out into the audience, and some guy stood up and slapped him on the back. Well, Slaughter knocked the guy down. He stomped on his throat. And then he came back in a ring. Now, I had always known Saj to be very mellow and mild. And I said, what the hell are you doing? I said, we're all going to get sued. They're going to say I should have kept you in the ring. Then the medics came in and put the guy on a stretcher. okay, and they put a thing around his neck, and then the ambulance whistled away with the thing going, and I had no idea, nor did the promoter, that this was a friend of his that he set up before the show.
Oh, man.
And I'm dying in the ring. I said, I'm going to be sued. I'm going to jail. It was my fault. I should have kept you in the ring. You shouldn't have gone out there. I said, what the hell is wrong with you? He said, that man should have never put his hands on me, and you put a wrestle like that. He goes, I said, but you didn't have to step on his throat 3 times. He won't do that again. I said, you're lucky if he's alive. And the promoter was coming out after, and he said, what are we going to do? I said, I hope you got insurance. And then we were back in the locker room, and he introduced me to the guy. I mean, the ambulance people were in on it. And then one other quick story, if I could tell.
Absolutely.
He was wrestling the Sheik one night, and this guy, it was at a high school, Danbury, Connecticut high school, and this local big-time college wrestler was supposed to come out and save Slaughter. This was part of the show. And he was going to stand in the back, and I was going to scratch my head, and that was his signal to come in. Well, it comes time, and he's not standing there in the back of the arena. So I said, what are we going to do? So they pull me in the corner, and the Sheik splashes me, and so I get down. I try to kill some time. So I get up. The guy's still not out. So I said, what are we going to do? He says, Dave, we're going to throw you out of the ring, all right? You get in the middle, and we'll throw. I said, okay, but I'm going back there, and I'm going to get the son of a bee, and bring him out here. Finally, the guy shows up, and he gets in the ring. I said, where have you been? I said, he goes, oh, I'm sorry. He said, were you okay? I said, no, I live for the pain. I said, where were you? Oh, he's getting autographs in the locker room and talking to the guys. I said, well, that's really nice. And, they had a pretty good laugh about that after the show. But Bob was a real great guy to work with, just a pleasure. And he actually on a couple of occasions said, Dave, you're one of my favorite refs. I enjoy working with you. And I'm not saying this to brag. I'm saying it because we had a pretty good rapport. We were both at the end of our careers, and we kind of respected each other. And he was just, like I said, a nice guy to work with, a consummate professional. And I went in a couple times. I got to go in at the Garden when him and what was his name? His partner at that time, I forget his name, Billy White Wolf, he used to wrestle as. I had to go in and save Slaughter. They had the flags, and they were punching Slaughter with the tips of the flags in the middle of the ring at the Garden. And he got a lot of heat at the Garden. I want to tell you, he built up. For somebody who went from a face to a heel, I've never seen anyone do a turn so perfect.
Al Casey.
I'm not El Casey, right? They ended up. They threw me across the ring a couple of times because I tried to pull him off Hogan, but it was, like you said, like we've been saying, it was an era that fans will not understand today.
I got a quick story to tell you about General Adnan. He's a funny guy, and he's really a good guy. And I had mentioned a little bit ago about I did Nick Bockwinkel's results record. It took me 2 years to compile all of the record that I did for Nick. And of course, I've since found so much more. I mean, those records are never done. Well, Adnan was at Nick's 60th birthday party, of which I was a guest. And cool. Adnan saw the record that I had given Nick, and he says to me, can you do mine for me? And I said, well, I could certainly look at doing it. He says, well, can you have it in a couple of weeks? I said, seriously, this thing takes time. This isn't something that I just go home and jot out tonight. It's a lot of research, results, programs, clippings, you name it. And but that was what he thought. He thought I could just whip this out and give it to him the next morning. And Nick and Adnan were roommates together when they traveled in Hawaii. They shared hotels together as they went the circuit. So they were long-time friends.
I always liked him. I thought he was great at everything he did. And he was a big guy. So it made it even a little bit more special in that era of some of the guys who weren't as tall anyways. He was kind of hefty a little bit. But nice to see Dino Bravo there. He had for some reason left Toronto as the Canadian champion. He was injured, wouldn't be appearing for a year or two. and went to the AWA as the AWA Canadian Heavyweight Champion. I think that morphed into the AWA British Empire title,
right,
something like that.
Right.
And I always liked Dino Bravo. I can remember seeing him right from the early 70s on TV out of Montreal. I thought he was fantastic. And even as his bulked up blonde guy, I thought he was great. I just really liked his whole persona. He could do great drop kicks in his youth, wrestle. He was trained really, really well. So, I mean, another guy who was sent to the territories to learn. Maybe he should have got bigger than he was, but I don't know. He was tough. Florida, California. He didn't make out to the West Coast too much in Canada, I don't think. But yeah, he wrestled all over learning the trade, which they did back in the 70s, right?
Yeah,
that was the beauty of the territories, guys,
Yeah.
where they had a place to go. Like you said, Wes, they could be injured or put out of action for a year, go to another territory, learn from other wrestlers. That's how all these rookies and guys like Remus and so many of them became good.
Yeah.
Because they were able to go to another territory and take the good and the bad from their new opponents and learn so much. If anything I miss most, it's the territories where you could see the talent become much better than it was. He didn't just bring a guy out because he was 6 foot 100 tall and put him into the ring and make him the next best thing. These guys worked for 10, 15 years sometimes, working around, working around, paying their dues. Good way to put it. Yeah. And when they finally hit their stride, you know, Nick Bockwinkel was 40 years old.
Yeah.
When he, 41 when he got the AWA title for the first time. But how good was he? He was fantastic.
Yeah.
And I'm glad you guys mentioned Dino Bravo. The way his life ended, though, was so tragic. Very
tragic.
Being murdered or being whacked. I know he was involved. He had some mafia ties, and that whole story. And from what I understood from the documentary on him was he was just relaxing one night. He's in his recliner. He's watching TV. His door was unlocked. Two guys come in, hold him down. And then that was that. I mean, that's just terrible end to his life, but a very legendary wrestler, as you mentioned. I knew him mostly as the WWF Dino Bravo, and with the blonde hair and the Canadian strongman with the earthquake and Jimmy Hart. Just a great career and just a tragic end to his life.
Yeah, I refereed him in the Guard. It was in the Garden, and I came across the video not too long ago. I think he wrestled Jimmy Powers, but he had the blonde hair and a huge guy. He was a big guy, obviously, and
very thick.
It was a tragedy. One question: was that me in the last clip with Slaughter? It looked like me as the ref in the last clip that you showed.
It could have been, right, Chris?
Yeah, it could have been, Dave. Could have been. Yeah. The one was
yes, Dave. They wanted to see if you knew it.
Yeah, I recognized my little belly. It must have been late in my career. Was hanging over the belt.
Was it Bundy and Slaughter?
It was Bundy and Slaughter, and it was probably
independent.
Yeah. It was definitely definitely Independence.
And it was the one before that was I wanted to throw in when you talked about George Slaughter was down in the Portland territory. That was about 85, 86 when he wrestled Kendo Nagasaki there. So that was the Portland clip of Slaughter. But Charlie, you got some tweets or our enhancement talent of the week?
Yes, sir. No tweets as of yet. That's in the cooker. We're going to have some classic Sheik tweets going forward on this show. We just don't know when or how we're going to do it yet. But man, I missed the Sheik so much in his tweet sheets, his tweets that we got to implement him back into the show somehow with the classic Sheik tweets. But guys, this has been great. Just hearing these stories, it's been completely awesome. Now, we want to of course get to our jobber of the week, our enhancement talent of the week. And this week it is a lot of these guys, because their careers are so brief, only 23 matches here for Mark Ming, and no relation to Haku, if anybody's wondering there. But 0-23 in his career from 1989 to 1993. And there's a picture, there he is, Papa Shango there, manhandling him a little bit there. Of course, Papa Shango going on to be the Godfather in the Attitude Era, but Papa Shango putting a putting him in a few holes there. He ended up winning the match, of course, because that was Mark's job, was to put over Papa Shango here. And but he was spared of any goo come pouring down from his head. No curses from Papa Shango that night, as he did to the Ultimate Warrior and plenty of others during that era. But Mark Ming, 0-23, and again, it makes you wonder, over a 4-year span, 23 matches. You know, they call these guys up, hey, can you do a job for us? And Mark Ming, our Jobber of the Week, who did that there, and you know, he made the contribution to the wrestling business, and we love to give those guys some love. And a lot of information on these guys is just so unknown. Some of these guys I get to that have like 20 or 30 matches or less, there's really no background as far as where they're from. But then you kind of get an idea from some of the areas that they wrestled in. Mark Ming there wrestled a lot of Northeast wrestling in Canada and some Northeast areas as well, like Boston, I believe. So he must have been living in that area when the WWF was in town. Gave him a call and worked some matches, got a free sandwich before the end of the night, and called it a day. So, hey, great stuff. But, gentlemen, we, again, as a wrestling fan as myself, listening to these stories and the great knowledge of history that you guys have when Chris is playing these clips, it's like watching one of these documentaries, you know, because it's like you're getting a perspective from gentlemen that have been there, that have lived through it, and are experts in that area. And guys, we're just so appreciative of your time and to be able to contribute to the show in that way. We appreciate it very much.
You're very welcome. It's great to come on with you guys. And Chris and I talk basically every day. So it's so cool to have a rapport with other fans. And George, we're coming up. We're coming up. It's going to be pretty soon. Don't worry. We've got something going on with my podcast. So,
nice. Very good.
Thank you very much for coming on today, and I appreciate you, and it's great to have met you. And unfortunately, I got to go.
No problems, Wes. Thanks so much for hanging out with us this morning.
Dave, great meeting you, and fun memories. I love the perspective that we give when we talk about these matches and the referees and the managers and the arenas. It's fun. So good job, Chris, Charlie, John, for keeping the ship straight. I enjoy being part of it. Thank you.
Thanks for the contribution, George. Always. Thank you very much.
Thank you, always.
It was great being with you also, George, and I know of your reputation prior to today, and also with Wes, and also the fact that there are younger people like yourself who are involved in the history of the sport in the classic era, the golden era, as we may want to call it. I had no idea 2 or 3 years ago, before I wrote the book, I had no idea there was such interest in that classic era, the number of websites and the number of people who follow it, until someone called me and wanted to do an interview about the heroes of wrestling 20 years later, which I never wanted to talk about again. But then I started looking around. I said, oh, my God, there's all kinds of people are really interested in a classic and golden era. And thanks to guys like yourself, you're keeping it alive. And you should be really, really just terrific.
It's a pleasure to hear your perspective, Dave, as being a referee and being in the trenches. And that story about Andre the Giant, lesson learned. You don't argue with the Giant. You said count to three, and that's it, right? And don't argue with him.
Count to three.
That's right. It's awesome, guys. Again, as fans, as us being fans and listening to your perspective on things, we very much appreciate it, gentlemen. And we look forward to next month to catching back up and doing the same drill, because it's priceless for us. So we look forward to having you guys back next month as well.
Yes, thank you guys very much. Appreciate it, and we always will talk.
All right. Thank you very much, Wes Maidman, George Shire, and Dave Dwindell for joining us today on the Falls Count Anywhere podcast. Guys, a couple side notes here before we, as we wind down the show here. Monday Night Raw will be in Buffalo on July the 10th. As of now, Cody Rhodes is set to make an appearance along with Logan Paul. It's going to be a big deal they're going to make out of that. And my personal favorite wrestler right now, the man they call Gunther. I just absolutely love him, man. I just think he's such a badass wrestler. He's got the look. He's got the brute force behind them and the whole Imperium thing they got going on. So a shout out to Gunther. But again, Monday Night Raw in Buffalo on July the 10th. There's still tickets available for that. So if you haven't gotten them, there's still some time to get them. And of course, as the WWE rolls along, we got Money in the Bank results from last week. Real quick, Damian Priest and Io Sky winning the respective Money in the Banks for the men's and women's. We'll see where that those storylines go coming up in the future here. Of course, as we approach, and Chris, you had mentioned too, we got Samoa Joe and CM Punk on AEW Collision. That's tonight, July the 8th. So tune into that. That's like Chris mentioned earlier, that's a free match you're getting on TNT, which could be easily a pay-per-view match, CM Punk and Samoa Joe. So look forward to that. But guys, as we wrap up here, of course, we I don't know what direction you want to go in here. We want
to, as we do each and every week, thank our fans right across all our platforms. Of course, here on Facebook, our home. Of course, our YouTube page, Friends with the Z, their media network, put that all in together under the search on YouTube and check out not just this show, Falls Count Anywhere, but John's Sports Ballin' Show and all the other great shows that John has.
Yeah.
Twitter at Count Anywhere is growing. I'm on Twitter meeting people all the time. And of course, our Spotify is there. And John, I've forgotten the past couple weeks, but our Facebook Star program.
Yep, Facebook Stars. As you're watching this right now, you can give us stars. 99 cents gives us 100 stars. The 100 stars that you give us accumulate to a point where Facebook will give us the opportunity to have other advertising. But the 99 stars also goes right into all the shows that we do. So if you got a chance, you got 99 cents, we would appreciate it.
Absolutely. And appreciate everybody that takes the time to check out the show, even if it's just for a couple minutes. We appreciate each and every one of you. And John, do you have any information? I know we love to give out some public information. We are a show of the people. And, there's a lot of mental health issues in this world these days. Go ahead, John.
Yep, 844-794-3812, mental health, right? Depression, anxiety, all that. Anything. You just don't feel like going to work. You don't feel like doing anything. Give them a call, 844-794-3812. They're there 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Even on holidays, they'll talk to you for hours and hours if you need them. It's all confidential and anonymous. They can help you if you want to find things in your area, places you could go to be counseled or whatever. Don't forget 988, which we show in one of our commercials. That's when you're in serious distress and maybe thinking the worst. If you dial 988, someone's there also that will help you 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. So before anything, if you can, please make one of these phone calls.
Absolutely. And a quick shout out to the Nickel City Comic-Con. I was able to attend last week. They put on a great show there at the Buffalo Convention Center here locally. Some of the wrestling legends. I didn't get a chance to go up to any of the tables and meet them, but I saw from a distance Greg the Hammer Valentine, Bruce Beefcake, Sergeant Slaughter. It was a well put together show. Unfortunately, the Stinger was not there because he did a high spot on AEW Dynamite, which got him a little bit banged up there. I hope AEW kind of tones him down a little bit. I love what Sting wants to put on a great show for the fans, but he's approaching 70, and to do the spot that he did, he almost knocked himself out cold. So quick, speedy recovery to the Stinger. And again, shout out to Nickel City Con for putting on a great show. It was a good time. So if you have a chance next year to check it out, they always have a great lineup of celebrities and wrestling legends. So maybe next year, check that out. But guys, again, thank you for a great show this week. And again, thank you to our panel for this week, Wes Maidment, George Shire, and Dave Dwindell. And we will see you guys in a couple weeks. We were hoping to have Slaughter's daughter, speaking of Sergeant Slaughter, the daughter of Sergeant Slaughter. We need to catch back up with her. We had her on about a year ago. Plenty of going on with her, and we look forward to catching up with her. But in the meantime, guys, have a great couple weeks, and we'll see you soon.
Yes, thank you.